Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Well, as you enter another week here and start to approach the official start to summer, one of the most important maps I'm going to be keeping an eye on is this one here. I show it to you in most videos, but this one goes back to May 1st and goes through June 12th and looks at precipitation ranks. And I'm going to have to watch this map very closely for not only changes over here in the Carolinas to Virginia, but also what's happening throughout the Midwest. That's going to be critical to keep an eye on. Now, as we press forward in this forecast, I'm going to show you a map where I've removed everything greater than 50% of normal precipitation over the last 2 weeks. So the map you're looking at here shows you in color those locations that had less than half of the normal rainfall in the last couple of weeks. And what we start to see here is that despite some of the showers and storms that have moved through parts of North Carolina, everywhere in red, these are locations that have been drier by less than half when you look back over the last couple of weeks. And what we're getting concerned about here is what this is doing to soil moisture. And then with the heat that we are forecasting coming in and the very scattered nature to the storms that are going to be happening, there's a lot of concern that there's going to be more flash drought development across the Carolinas, getting into Virginia. And then also, notice as part of Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, parts of the upper Midwest, and then throughout Texas and into the Southwest. These are areas that have been just very dry and have not seen some of the recent precipitation. So soil moisture values there are starting to reflect that. This is the latest map looking at 40 centimeter or 16-inch soil moisture values, and they're low. You can see several places throughout North and South Carolina where these values are getting quite low. The latest drought monitor, which came out last Thursday, didn't show too much change, despite going back over about, maybe 10 days ago, we saw the heavier rain here almost right up against the coast here in this particular region. But overall, we've not seen too much of a change in the drought monitor here as we get into the month of June. Okay, what are we watching in the near term? So let's talk about that very quickly. As of early this morning here on Monday, we had excessive heat watches and heat advisories throughout North and South Carolina, getting all the way down to almost Savannah. But then in the midsection of the country, a broad area here that's got heat advisories, excessive heat warnings, and excessive heat watches. We're going to see some very high temperatures here. When you come back over to the Four Corner states, these are all red flag warnings for fires, but just to show you how amplified the jet stream pattern is, we've got frost advisories, frost and freeze warnings out for Nevada, Oregon, and flood watches out for parts of eastern Washington that then break over into a wind advisory in Montana. So I'm showing you this whole national perspective so that we can understand the pattern we're going to be getting into. Now, as I kind of zoom in here and just take a closer look at the way things are set up, you can see the flow of the trade winds coming into the Gulf of Mexico, and then that moisture is running up to the north here. But as it's doing this, it's bringing in a lot of heat. And what we're going to be watching for is this particular region. It's called the Caribbean Gyre, but we're going to be watching for some potential tropical development here. I'll keep an eye on it this week, but I just want you to know, go to the National Hurricane Center's website, nhc.noaa.gov. You can see where they're currently giving this area about a 30% chance of developing over the next week. What I want to make a point of saying here is that the moisture from this, if it continues to get pushed by the trade winds, sends whatever could develop here toward Mexico. And I'll be watching to see how that gets integrated into the southwestern monsoon as we go forward. So I just want to make you aware, we are keeping an eye on this particular region right now, but that's about all the best evidence I can provide you is what you see here from the National Hurricane Center. Too many uncertainties to tell you where this is going to go into the near future. What I can tell you with a bit more confidence is the behavior of the jet stream. Now, we've talked a lot about this, so just to get you oriented, here's the U.S., here's the west coast of North America. Do you now start to see how it's becoming a bit more wavy versus the almost straight west to east flow we had been experiencing? These deeper troughs are starting to break up the pattern. And what we want to ask ourselves is, what does that look like going forward? So let's get into that now. Do the longer range first, and I'll come back to some of the details on the storms we're going to see this week. Okay, as I play this forward, you just notice here that as we work our way out into the middle of June and then here out into the third week of June, in fact, let's just stop it on the solstice. Do you see how the jet stream's really broken up in its pattern? All right, we no longer have that continuous flow. We tend to favor more ridging events in the midsection of the country and not along the west coast. In fact, if we just keep going out here, it really breaks apart and slows down and transitions to the north. How about I just stop you out here on Saturday the 25th? We once again see a broader ridge opening in the midsection of the country. Now, what that means for us, we'll likely see more above average temperatures. We'll likely catch storms if they come through out of the northwest, fed on some Atlantic moisture. And that's going to be the way things are going to set up. You're going to probably see in your forecast every day for the next 15 plus days a 30% chance of rain. It's just going to show up under this heat with the moisture being in place that storms could pop there. What I'm concerned about is if it gets stuck into this configuration, not only by the end of June, but beyond. Now, what are we looking at? You see, the Pacific jet doesn't extend all the way over to the west coast. It's broken up by this trough in the Gulf of Alaska. It's a bit farther north than it has been. And that central United States ridge seems to be a consistent piece with all of this. So the net effect of that is to go from this week 1 pattern, which you see over here on the left when comparing it to normal, to the week 2. Drier conditions possible, stronger southwestern monsoon. Storms are going to run the periphery of the ridge through the Canadian prairie. Now, we will likely still get storms that come in from this trajectory, but forecasting them in the longer range is going to be very, very difficult. And that's just because of the daily nature of the development of these storms. We have to watch the upstream complexes develop. I'm talking about the ones here that then come down to us later after they go over the Appalachian Mountains. So under that same pattern, we tend to be much hotter than normal. In fact, the midsection of the country, very hot. And there's a lot of concern that we're going to see this on repeat, while the West Coast, especially the Pacific Northwest, doesn't. Now, another way to look at it here is this is the risk of hazardous temperatures from the 18th through the 24th. So we're really looking at here at week 2. And you can see that the excessive heat, a slight risk of excessive heat, covers a broad area under that ridge. The greatest risk is going to be down here from eastern Texas to Mississippi during that time period. Now, what's causing this and how do we get an update here on the longer range? I'm going to take you first to our La Nina. So the ocean temperatures in the central Pacific still very much in the La Nina territory, but they've stabilized about a half degree below average, a half degree Celsius below average. We expected this to kind of start to moderate during this time of year, but what I think we need to watch more carefully is the ocean temperature patterns here, which are warm, the cooler water that's there, and then here in the Atlantic, where the water temperature is still quite warm. This is important for the hurricane season, which is up and coming. But do these warm waters here, combined with the cooler water in this area, help break the jet stream apart into more ridging that happens here with troughing in the Gulf of Alaska, at least up against the west coast? Because that sends the jet stream pattern back into that broader ridge into the midwestern part of the United States. Now, there's evidence that this La Nina, see the blues in through here, that this La Nina still is going. Those are the trade winds. And the blues represent stronger than normal trade winds here, and that's a telltale sign of a La Nina. So we're still seeing that behavior in the wind field. The MJO is also responding. We expected to spend a lot of time near phase 1, come back in a null space, and then come back out over here in phases 7 and 8. That's common in June and July. I don't expect it to really break out in the Indian Ocean or north of Australia anytime soon. So you say, Eric, distill all that down for me. Let's make some sense out of it, because these are the dynamical interaction between the tropics and the extratropics, and they land us here. So this is from last Friday's long-range run of the European model. We'll get a new update of this tonight here on Monday night, but notice where it's keeping the driest conditions. What's interesting is it appears that the La Nina pattern wants to take hold as we go out there into mid-June to mid-July. Now, do you notice it increases the rainfall here as we approach July? That, again, is a consequence of putting a triple ridge pattern with one here, one from Bermuda over there, which is off the screen, and the other one's way over here. So the flow does a lot of this. And that puts a near stationary boundary somewhere in here that just gives us better and better chances of seeing storms. And that's what we're on the lookout for. But this is, again, going from late June to late July. But the European model has been quite consistent. On the temperature side of things in that longer range outlook, we've seen more of this pattern showing up, with most of the heat anchored in the central United States than it is anchored over the western part of the country. So the eastern part of the country. Now, when we translate this back into what we've been watching as of late, we've seen big storms rolling over the ridge that's developing. So the moisture came into the northwest, causing a lot of problems in the northwest here. They just did a first cutting of hay, and then it got dumped on with respect to rain. Big storms producing a lot of hail in the Midwest, and we're going to be watching for the storms to come toward us soon. Now, a lot of folks in North Carolina have been talking about how some of these storms have really avoided certain areas, like right in through here. and also some other areas down in South Carolina where the storms just keep kind of leapfrogging these certain positions. I'm actually doing some research on this now to understand if that's a more common phenomena than I expected. I think it's due to topography right in this area, but we're going to watch it carefully to see if it's something that's actually showing up in a more robust way in the longer term data set. So I get what you're talking about here. But what I'm concerned about are the storms coming out of Wisconsin today heading this way. Because while we have this 30% chance almost every day of severe storms, look at what happens when you go to Tuesday. The threat of some of the storms being severe increases. And on Wednesday, again, we're not out of the woods for seeing more chances of storms. Unfortunately, it's summer. And what I mean by that is our models are just not capable yet of accurately and, skillfully predicting where these storms are going to be. But what we're watching right now is, a lot of scattered convection through the morning. This is the storm complex I need you to be watching. It's coming through Wisconsin late today. You see, we're going to get scattered storms in our area today. It's going to be what happens with this storm system coming through Michigan, heading in the overnight hours here farther and farther toward the mid-Atlantic. That's going to be the storm system, the tail of which we're going to have to watch to see if it increases our storm threat on Tuesday. The models are suggesting it will. We're going to have to keep an eye on it. So you see it, watch it again. That's what I'm keeping a very close eye on as we progress forward in this forecast. But again, the main story here is that repeated chances of daily storms are in the works, with Tuesday being our greatest risk of seeing some severe storms. Now, if I back it out again, you will not get, unfortunately, an accurate precipitation forecast. They just won't exist in this thunderstorm environment. So we do see, chances of a ½ inch of rainfall in through here. That could happen. But some of these storms are going to put down 2 inches of rain. You're going to have to watch them on radar as they occur to see how it goes. Now, notice the Midwest, the Mid-South, Texas, and parts of the plains. Outside of some scattered storms, there's going to be regions out here that miss all of this precipitation, and that's where that additional heat and drought risk is going to become very problematic. I would like to show you, though, the main story here. So if we look at the forecast, here we are getting out to Tuesday. We've already seen through Tuesday and Wednesday. That's the big low that I want you to watch later in the week, because around that low, there are fronts like this, and they're just going to kind of slowly push east. So there's our chances for some scattered storms on Wednesday. Then we play this forward into Thursday. See the front right there? It's coming through our area. That's Thursday afternoon and evening. Getting into Friday morning, we're just going to see that front all week long increase our chances of storms. It would appear that as we go into the weekend, this upcoming weekend, our chances of precipitation drop off. That's when we're fully under the ridge and we're just down to the setup where we have the pop-up thunderstorms that show up in the forecast. All right. Week 2. Notice here by day 10, trough, ridge, trough. That's what's keeping the heat here. This is what's going to give us the potential for some of those ridge riders fed on Gulf moisture. But you're going to see that the forecast under that ridge tries to keep things drier than normal. What I'm telling you is we could still see daily thunderstorm events. We have to keep our eye on those as we go forward. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is temperatures. Here's high temperatures expected today, mid-90s. 110 in the midsection of the country, though. There's Monday's highs going into Tuesday. Might hit 99 in Raleigh on Tuesday. That's about 12 degrees above average. As we go here into Wednesday, still hot. Thursday, still hot. And getting into Friday. And look, by the time we get into Friday, the next heat wave is developing. So that one starts to move across the country. Look, I told you your weekend's going to be better, right? Saturday, 86. Sunday, 86 in Raleigh. But you can see the next wave of heat coming. And watch when it gets there. I'll take you out to day 5 through 10. You see the heat's right there in the midsection of the country, and it moves toward us as we play forward, working our way out to the end of this month. So we're going to favor more days with above average temperature than below average, which means if you do miss those storms, and that is why I came back to this map at the beginning, if you miss those storms, the risk of flash drought development is high right now. And yes, that could really start to have an impact on our yields. So talk to your local agronomists, talk to the University Extension folks, talk to those people that can help you understand if you have questions about this, what this might do to the crop. I'm going to be watching it very closely myself. One last thing, in South America, I don't have a map for it right now, but we did have some frost that was way down there in southern Brazil, could have impacted the safrinha crop. And I'm going to finish with Europe. Heat in the Iberian Peninsula, France, Germany, Southern Europe over to Ukraine. That's the next 10 days. The models are also keeping some pockets into here, including parts of Ukraine, drier than normal, which means we're not only watching the North American crop, but what's going on across Europe and the Black Sea region for possibly having some drought and heat stress right now as well. So we covered a lot today, but I wanted to kind of give you a thorough treatment of what I'm watching, and I'll keep an eye on it all week this week, and we'll be back again next Monday. Have a good one. Thank you.